Welcome to the Lifework Podcast. My name is Stan Norman.
And I'm Rhyne Putman.
And over the next few weeks, we are going to take a bit of a detour. We're going to do a Christmas theme series of podcasts dealing with the issue of work and what the Bible has to say about Christmas and work.
Absolutely. We're going to be talking about the work that the shepherds did, the sort of intellectual work of the Magi, and the work of motherhood in the example of Mary, the mother of Jesus.
So we're going to have Christmas in blue-collar work, Christmas in white-collar work, and Christmas in the work of family. We hope that you will give this a listen, and we hope this enriches and helps you in your Christmas celebration. Join us as we tackle these themes in our Lifework Podcast.
Absolutely.
So, Ryan, were you ever in a Christmas pageant play growing up?
Many times, yes. I was shepherd. I was a wise man from time to time. And there was one time when I almost passed out because, my knees were buckled up the whole time, and it was a pretty scary experience.
The role was too demanding for you?
It was demanding.
What do you remember? Were you the shepherd or the wise man or Joseph or somebody else?
I think at that point in time I probably was a shepherd.
Okay.
I never got a lot of the big speaking parts. Mary and Joseph. I wasn't the star of the show. I was always kind of like the minor characters, that sort of thing. Anything where there was a big musical number that somebody needed to sing a solo, they would not give to me.
Yeah, same here. Same here. I love Christmas pageants. In fact, I saw the movie that came out recently this year, and it's going to rise toward one of my top five.
The best Christmas pageant ever. It's
I loved
phenomenal
it.
movie.
I love that. And the kids.
We've seen it twice already.
So, you just can't go wrong with kids playing the biblical characters because it is an unknown dynamic.
Right.
You cannot plan for what they're going to do.
Well, that was one of my favorite books in elementary school, was the book, and I don't remember the book being as distinctly Christian as the movie ended up being. I mean, maybe it was. I don't remember. It's been a while since I read it, but the book made me laugh out loud a lot as a kid, and of course the movie did as well. I laughed a lot, and then at one point, when they were showing the Nativity scene, and the herdsman girl is sitting there holding the baby doll, and she starts crying.
Yeah.
And I start crying.
Yeah, I did too.
I'm sobbing like a baby, and my 7-year-old looks up at me and she says, "Daddy, you're embarrassing me." So.
Well, I'm a grandpa now, so grandpa's cried. I cried in the movie.
Sure.
The reason I bring that up is because in our topic today, we're going to talk about the different characters that God intersected and invited to be a part of the Christmas narrative. And for our session at this time, I want to talk about the shepherds. They are always featured in the children's nativity presentations. They were very instrumental in that first Christmas. However, if we were going to script it out and did not have the background that we would have, we likely would not have thought of including shepherds.
Yeah, for multiple reasons.
So what were some of those reasons? Why would they not have been included when we speak from a human perspective? Why would we not have invited them?
Well, if the TV show that Mike Rowe did, Dirty Jobs, were around then, this would be one of the dirtiest jobs in ancient Israel.
So we're kind of talking about a blue collar Christmas here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is certainly hard work, and it's certainly work that doesn't get a lot of respect.
Right.
And of course, one of the things that I find so interesting about this particular story is that the first witnesses to Jesus were people who would have been thrown out of court as unreliable witnesses. In the Jewish tradition that we have in the proceedings of the Sanhedrin, they were explicitly condemned as untrustworthy, vile thieves. And the reason why...
Yeah, I was about to ask, how did they get that?
Because essentially they had this reputation for grazing land that didn't belong to them.
So
whether that was true or not, I mean, in every situation...
So the reputation was earned on the caliber and the way they worked.
Right. So I mean, it was the way that they did their job. And, of course, you could say other things about, the conditions that they lived in. They probably were unpleasant to the nose when you came by them. They were outside all the time. They were with their animals all the time. And again, they gained this reputation for basically using the land without permission. And there's an interesting kind of parallel, I think, in Luke's gospel between these shepherds who would not have been counted as worthy or reliable witnesses in a courtroom. They're the first witnesses to the birth of Jesus. And, of course, the women who are the witnesses to the resurrection at the end of the gospel, who, again, by the same laws in the Sanhedrin, women would not have been counted as acceptable witnesses because they had this negative view of women as hysterical. And so, I mean, Luke just sort of tells us two incredible stories with two unlikely sets of first witnesses.
Going into the Christmas season as we are when we record this, and hopefully when our listeners download it and watch or listen to it, in Luke's Gospel, chapter 2, we have this very detailed account of these individuals being confronted by God, intersecting through the angelic visitation, that this incredible cataclysmic cosmic event is happening, and intersecting them in the place where they work, while they are working, intersecting a group of highly blue-collar guys who, as you have said, would not have been on the top 10 of the top 100 people chosen based on their vocation that you would want to witness, be reliable witnesses to something going on. And they're invited to be part of the Christmas event.
Right. But God always had a special place for this particular occupation. He always had a special place for shepherding. And, you look across the Old Testament, there's several places where shepherding shows up. I mean, Genesis 4, Abel was a shepherd, and of course he was viewed positively, where Cain was not.
Yeah, Cain was not.
I mean, God called Abraham and blessed him with a wealth and livestock of sheep herds. I mean, and he was in the shepherding business, if you will. Jacob appeared before Pharaoh, and we read in Genesis 46 that all shepherds were detestable to the Egyptians, probably for much of the same reason that the Sanhedrin later condemned them. What was Moses doing with his father-in-law when God called him? He was again shepherding. He was watching the flocks. The angel of the Lord appeared to him when he was doing that in the burning bush. David was keeping watch over sheep when the prophet Samuel called him out. And by the way, interestingly enough, he was in the same hills of Bethlehem watching sheep that these shepherds probably were in, or somewhere in that vicinity, when the angels came and spoke to them about the birth of Jesus. The prophet Amos, of course, sheep breeder, sheep farmer, and he didn't fancy himself a prophet or the son of a prophet. He saw himself, his identity was as a shepherd, But despite the way that shepherds were viewed,
God himself,
that's what I was going to say. God himself was known as the shepherd. We see that in Genesis 48:15. We see it in the 23rd Psalm, Psalm 80. There's other places, Isaiah 40.
Jesus would embrace this metaphor.
Jesus called himself in John 10 the Good Shepherd. And then, of course, Peter later on referred to Jesus as the shepherd and the overseer of our souls.
So this matters to God, this particular vocation. But even beyond that, I think it's safe to say that even blue-collar people matter to God. Right. Those who do those hard jobs, the dirty-collar jobs, the outdoor work with your hands kinds of jobs, these people matter to God. And God will show up in that work environment and make himself known and make his purposes known and draw people to himself in that kind of work environment.
Right. Absolutely. He does the same thing in the world today. And again, a thing that I would note about shepherds and other people who might have been like day laborers is these are people who really lived from day to day.
Yeah, paycheck to paycheck is what we would call it today.
Well, yeah, it would be like that, but payday is every day. Essentially, they were living, every day with the hope that tomorrow they would get to eat. And there's a reason why when Jesus taught them the Lord's Prayer, he said, "Give us this day our daily bread." I mean, it was trusting in the Lord to provide for the next moment. And again, that would probably describe the vast majority of people in the ancient world in Jesus' day, say for, maybe some of the more educated upper class individuals and of course the aristocracy of ancient Israel. But it described most people. They were waiting on God to do something. They were waiting on God to provide for them. They were waiting on God to take care of their every need. And these shepherds were probably no different in that regard.
So as we kind of come to a conclusion here, what would be some encouraging takeaways from this passage from Luke that intersect with Christmas and with meeting God in a blue-collar job?
Well, first and foremost, God cares about what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing. No matter what anybody else might say about your job.
Your job matters to God.
Your job matters to God. And I mean, again, the elites, stuck their nose down at what they did. People had these suspicions. They didn't trust them. They didn't like them. But God didn't go first to the religious scribes. God didn't go first to the Pharisees or the teachers of the law who should have been looking for and waiting for these things. He went to regular Joes.
Yeah.
And of course, they got to behold the glory of God in a way that, very few people in biblical history
in the context of their job.
Right where they were.
Yeah.
Right where they were. They got to see and behold the glory of God. And of course, one of the things that the narrative in Luke tells us is they basically went into Bethlehem looking house to house for the baby that had been born. And I kind of get this picture, it's Jesus, for one thing, wasn't born in a stable. That's a conversation for another time. But they go house to house, knocking on every door in Bethlehem. Is there a baby been born in this house tonight? Is there a baby that's been born in this house tonight? And they finally land on the one, and they see exactly what the angels told them, and they are so overjoyed that they go and become the first evangelists. They go and become the first messengers of this incredible news. And sometimes God finds unlikely messengers in places that people aren't looking for.
Yeah.
And that's what he does in this story.
He sure does. What a good encouragement this Christmas season. Hope it encourages our listeners, especially if you have a hard job that you don't think matters to anybody. It matters to God.
Indeed.
And the Christmas story is reaffirmation of that.
Absolutely.